Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Talking Real Estate with Champions Real Estate Team here at Berkshire Hathaway Home Service Ambassador Real Estate Company. My name is Mark Wehner II, team leader here at Champions Real Estate Team. Joining me today is Russ Williams with Williams Mortgage. So thanks for joining us, Russ. So we got our late afternoon edition. So got a little crazy. I had closings this afternoon, had get new tires on the car, had a flat tire on one of my showings. So the day in the life of a realtor. So you got one new tire and three older tires, and you got all terrain, all wheel drive, so you can't have different tread sizes. And so I was like, anyways, I guess you get one flat, you got to buy all, anyways, I needed them. But so yeah, fun stuff about driving around a lot for your job. So, but quick tip for today, we always like to start a quick tip, kind of go over the real estate market, all that fun stuff. But quick tip today, Russ and I were just talking, one thing that I've seen some of my clients do, looked into it a little bit, talked to Russ about it, is escrow accounts. So when you have a mortgage, when you buy a house, and you have a lender involved in that transaction, basically what they do is you have your escrow account gets set up, and basically every month you're putting a little bit aside for your property taxes and your insurance into that escrow account. Once a year, your mortgage company pays your homeowner's insurance, and then they also pay your property tax. The reason why they do that is because the lender doesn't want to get left on the hook with an uninsured house or taxes not being paid and a lien getting filed against that property, because that government basically takes first position. They're going to get paid first in the foreclosure if they get that house back, or the bank gets that house back. So the bank wants to protect their assets. So what you can also do, just one, kind of our quick tip today, is ultimately if you are, very, what do I say? I'm drawing a blank here, diligent and
Yeah.
what do I say?
Fiscally accountable, responsible. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically what you can do is you can say, hey, mortgage company, because that escrow account just sits there, doesn't do anything, and so, it's not earning any interest. It's just sitting there in a nice little safe account that it's guaranteeing that taxes and those insurance are getting paid. Well, you can say, if I'm responsible enough to pay my bills, I can say, hey, lender, Mr. or Mrs. or the lender, I'm going to cancel my escrow account, give me my money back. And you can put that into, let's say, a high yield savings account that you have access to, readily available, but you're also gaining interest. Maybe that's 3%, 4%, whatever the given rate is, at whatever specific bank or credit union or whatever you use. And so you may gain, if your property taxes are $10,000 and you got a, homeowner's insurance of 3, 4, 5, 6, I've had clients that have told me they have $9,000 of, homeowner's insurance. Well, that may be $20,000 that you can set in an account over the 12 months. And when you got to pay it, you're gaining, that you're accruing that interest. So you're gaining a little bit. And ultimately, our taxes always are going up, usually, typically, and our insurances, as we see in Nebraska with all the hailstorms, wind, and all that fun stuff, have been going up lately. So you can maybe offset some of those costs by that interest gained, or like Russ said when we were talking about, you can go to dinner. You can get a couple extra pennies to go out to dinner or something like that. So, but it's just kind of one of those things that if you're fiscally responsible, and that may be an option because most people don't even know you can do that. And so you can just call the bank and say, hey, give me my escrow account, close the escrow account, and then basically open it up, a savings account or someplace else that you want to park that money, while you can utilize it, why rather than giving the bank, because they're probably taking around, turning around, and lending that money out anyways, and they're making money on it on their books. So anyways, we can go down a whole rabbit hole on that side of it. But that's our kind of quick tip. So if you have questions on it, I kind of, you can ask Russ, ask myself, you can call your lender. You need any recommendations on, kind of high yield savings account, it's kind of, you go around and just call the credit union and say, hey, you got a high yield savings account, or if you got a money market that you have access to, that you want to be able to readily access it, because you don't want to be tied up in a CD and all of a sudden, you got to pay your property taxes, and next thing you know, it's tied up for 3 or 4 months, in that. So, but have that money readily available, you can utilize that and capitalize on some of that. So that's our quick tip. Escrow accounts, do you need one? Do you not need one? And you can take it, and say it's $24,000 a year, let's say, for both of them. Take $2,000 and auto deposit that every month so that you're still making that escrow payment into your high yield or into your savings account. And so that way it's always there. So you don't forget, like, oh gosh, I forgot I got to have this, property tax payment. So you just got to be mindful of that. So I think that kind of summarizes that there. So let's jump into what's going on in the real estate market. So we're starting to see a little more activity as far as homes coming on the market, which is typical this time of year. So we got 838 homes. And I also ran these numbers a little bit later in the day, so that may have a little bit of effect on the numbers. So I typically run them around, or late morning time frame, early morning time frame. So it gave it a couple extra hours for new homes to come on the market on a Wednesday. So we had 838 homes. Excuse me. new on the market, 459 new contracts written, so up a little bit, but that's also possibly because I ran the numbers a little bit later in the day, and 383 happy new homeowners. So congratulations to my two clients this week. So we had a closing today, had a closing on Monday. So I got a couple of those numbers there from the Champions Real Estate team there. So awesome for them. But yeah, so I mean, it's still a great time to buy. Rates are still pretty favorable where they've been, in that regard. So I think it's still a great time to get out there. What we're seeing is some of the houses getting pulled off the market because some of those sellers, may feel their house is worth more and they haven't got that number. So maybe they're canceling that listing or just letting it expire. But the thing is, those people still may want to sell their home. So if we're out there in the marketplace, we can, as the agents, we can pull up those canceled and those listed and track down the sellers and say, hey, you still interested in selling your house? Because I may have a client. Now they got to be realistic on price and all that kind of fun stuff. But that's just other options that we have in our toolbox to go from there. So let's look at a 30,000 foot view. Not too much changing on the 30,000 foot view, but I just like showing it just for perspective here. So we had 4,223 homes active on the Omaha and Lincoln MLS, 2422 on Douglas Sarpy County. So that just went up, I think, like 5 houses, from last week, if I remember right. And then the existing homes, 1,494. We had 1,493 last week. So, like I said, we saw more of those houses go on the MLS in that time frame. We had more come off than we typically do. So it's kind of a wash on the numbers on this chart when you kind of compare the two. New construction, 928. Months of inventory is still at 3. But in certain areas, we're seeing a little bit higher where it's more of a neutral market. Some of my clients that we've closed recently, we've gotten closing costs paid. And I guess you got the closing costs being able to finance into that loan because, maybe they want to keep some of that cash aside so they can, buy couches and furniture, lawn, the things they need for their first home and things like that. So average sale price at 360. So I mean, we're still vibrant market out there. I think it's more of a neutral, balanced market, getting home inspections, getting repairs done, all that kind of fun stuff. So, but yeah, if you have questions, get in touch with us. Love to sit down, do a coaching session with you, get you rocking and rolling on the buying side or even selling side, and go from there. So let's jump in with Russ, and he kind of fills in what's going on the mortgage side. So how are you doing, Russ?
Hi, everybody. In case you missed the news, the government shut down at midnight last night. It's not totally unexpected. They, at this point in time, seem to be a ways apart, but we'll see. The last time that we had a shutdown like this was 5 years ago, lasted for 16 days. What's interesting about that is that the Congressional Budget Office, just on that 16-day shutdown 5 years ago, saw or projected that there was a 6% loss in GDP for the year. Keep in mind that all of our conversations have been around the Fed and the Fed wanting to keep growth in check. There was another office, the Council of Economic Advisors, which is in the executive branch, that pointed out that the last time we had this happen, that 16-day shutdown, that it cost 120,000 jobs. I don't bring this up for any other purpose other than to say that we don't know how that's going to impact mortgage rates. We do know that some of the offices that need to be involved at a federal level in financing, such as for USDA loans, properties in flood zones, and maybe even some delays with FHA and VA financing, there could be a ripple effect that can roll through the market. But having said all that, historically, when we see these kinds of shutdowns, as long as we don't default on our debt, it has been a favorable thing for mortgage rates. Does that mean they're going to drop by 1%? No, but it typically has been favorable. So in the event you're thinking of buying a house or selling one and purchasing another, get in touch with Mark and his team sooner rather than later and get your plan in place in the event that you might be impacted by potential slowdowns as a result of the government shutdown. Hopefully it'll be a short-term thing and we'll get back up and moving again. But if it's not, you need to be aware of it, prepared for it, and not be surprised by it.
Yeah. Like I said, it's the more and that's what it is if you're in that limbo phase on whether you want to buy or sell a house, and sometimes, well, I don't want to sell now because it's going into the winter, but then you may also find a house, have, less competition to buy, and so there's always that balancing point. We talk about 100 times, on this show, on this video, is that basically, when is the right time to buy? The right time to buy is when you are ready. Personally, financially, your job situations and those type of things. And when you're ready to rock and roll, then that's the time to buy. Because most people, if they bought a house 10 years ago, they're probably not upset of buying at the price they bought it at or the rate that they bought it at 10 years ago, just because of appreciation and principal pay down. And they're like, oh my gosh, I bought that house for $110,000, 10 years ago, and now it's worth 210. It's like over 10 years to make $100,000 is a pretty good return on your investment over that time. So yes, you have capital expenditures. You may have a roof, you may have a furnace, you may have those type of things that come down, but it's always typically a good investment in that regards, rather than renting for the last 10 years, because you're missing out on all that appreciation. You're not gaining any equity, putting any money in your pocket, and you may, yes, not have to pay for that furnace or those air conditioners or roof or whatever those larger capital expenditures are, but in turn, that rent is going up. And so you're not being able to park any money into your own equity. So that's what we're here to do, just coach, educate you. I just did a Zoom video with a new prospective client last Thursday, had an awesome conversation with them. Going to do another conversation, get together this next Thursday. And it's just let them understand how the process works. And just, it's fun for me to watch when you're working with those clients that sometimes the light bulb goes on. The light bulbs start turning on. You're like, oh, I never thought about real estate in this manner. I've never thought about using my equity in that way. Or I've never thought about, buying less house than I need to, parking some of that cash in a high yield savings account to start building that up. And then basically, use this house to buy a next house and then keeping that house as a rental. So there's a lot of different things that we talk about, when we're going through those coaching sessions of what makes sense for you. And that's the fun part about this business is, my mindset works as a coach. Those that may or may not know, I coach hockey for 15 years. That's how my brain operates as a coach. A teacher. I teach real estate continuing education classes. And so that's just how I operate. And so when I transfer that to my sellers and my buyers and my clients and prospective clients, real estate investors, what makes sense to you? My clients that closed today, we talked about the escrow thing. Hey, here's some food for thought. If you guys are fiscally responsible to, are you able to put that money aside every month, put it in another account, and then make those payments? Then that may be something you can earn a little bit extra money. He's like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that, because you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's what we, Russ from the financial side, from me from the real estate side, we know enough to be dangerous, and it's just let's educate and then keep educating. We're always sharpening the axe and getting better at what we do, trying to get our clients to educate themselves and, point them in the directions of, maybe it's just different podcasts that we listen to that trip our trigger and, just different information. Then you can go and do that research on your own and say, hey, Mark, I listened to this. Does this make sense? And, if you say that maybe doesn't make sense to me, but hey, let's talk to Russ. We'll get you the right answers, and connect you with the right people. My goal is to be the resource of information, not always the source of the information, because I might not have that knowledge on whatever question you may ask, but I have the resources to go back and get that answer for you or put you in contact with those people. And that's what they talk about. Surround yourself with the people that can help you grow, both, in all different facets of your life, and all that good stuff. So that's what we're here to do here at Champions Real Estate Team. That's what we love to do. So we'd love to team up with you or coach you, help you, educate you, all that kind of fun stuff. But let us know. Reach out to us any way, shape, or form. Obviously, our contact information is at the bottom of the screen here. You can hit us up on any of the social medias or all that fun stuff. So, but love chatting with everybody. So give me a holler and we'll rock and roll from there. So take care, and we will see everybody next week.